Hello, 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 everyone. And thank you so much for joining us today. We are talking about projecting presence and power at work. So if you are joining us live, please say hello in the chat. We love to see that we have people joining from all over the world. So say hi, let us know where you are watching from today. We want to know. And as we're going along, as we're having this conversation today, please be sharing in the chat what is standing out for you, what's resonating with you. Most importantly, what are you going to take away and put into practice? Because insight without action is useless. So, again, as you're coming on, say hi in the chat. We want to know where you are watching from today. So, I am Melody Wilding. I'm the author of a book called Trust Yourself, Stop Overthinking, and Channel Your Emotions for Success at Work. And really, what my work is about is helping people not only master their own inner psychology, getting over the fears, the doubts, the insecurities that hold them back at work, but also being able to understand and influence other people's psychology. And that's a big part of what we're going to be talking about today. So I am so excited to have my friend, my colleague, Alisa Cohn, joining us today. Let me tell you a little bit about Alisa because she is really a superstar. So it is quite a treat to have her here today. So Alisa Cohn is an executive coach based in New York, and she helps startup founders mature into world-class CEOs. She has helped pretty much every startup you can name out there, from Etsy, Foursquare, Vimeo, Tory Burch, The Wirecutter. And get this, she has been named the #1 startup coach in the world. The #1 startup coach in the world. You have her here chatting with us today. And she's also named to the Thinkers 50 list. She is one of the top 30 global gurus in startups. So she's a big deal. She's also named one of the top 10 leadership speakers by Inc. magazine. She's spoken all over the world. We were just talking about her extensive travels all over the world a moment ago before we went live. And she's also the author of, Alisa, do you want to hold it up? Her latest book is called From Startup to Grown Up. Yes, amazing. And let me just get the subtitle right here. Grow your business without, let me see, why can't I find
Grow your leadership to grow your business.
Grow your leadership to grow your business. And we'll make sure the links for that are in the chat, or in the comments here. So Alisa, before we get into our conversation today, I would love to just give you a second to introduce yourself to everyone, share if there was anything you wanted to add that I didn't mention about you.
Oh, you're so sweet, Melody. First of all, what a pleasure to join you. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's such a joy to be able to be in conversation with you. And I guess I would say, hi, everybody. And maybe the only thing I would say about, thank you for sharing my bio. In addition to my book, I have my podcast, also called From Startup to Grown Up. This is not some professional interest that I put away at night. Personal growth is my religion. It is part of my makeup, and it is my life's work to help other people grow their leadership, to grow their business, right? I understand that everybody has, the need to grow, and personal growth will help everybody personally and professionally. And that is kind of why I was put on this earth, to help people and support them in that process.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And that's one thing I love about you. We've hung out socially, and what I love about you is we get to nerd out about personal and professional development, even when it's off the clock, and that's fun. That is fun. So and that's also precisely why I wanted to have you here to talk about this topic of projecting presence and power, is because you've seen this from both sides of the coin. You've seen this helping CEOs and leaders grow and amplify their own presence and power. But you've also seen it from the other side, where CEOs and leaders are having to give people performance reviews or give them corrective feedback because they're not projecting enough presence and power. So I thought it would be really fun to have a conversation about that. We'll get into it in just a minute. I just want to say hi to some people who are joining us. Candace from South Africa, great to have you here. Lauren from Michigan, Dr. Dario from Indiana, Lisa in Milwaukee. Great. As you are coming on, please say hi in the chat. We love having you here from all over the world. All right, Alisa, let's start by talking about executive presence, because I feel like everyone is talking about executive presence these days, and I am going to guess that you have some opinions about it because the term gets thrown around a lot. So how do you define executive presence? And then I would love to talk to you about what are some of the biggest myths or misconceptions you see around it. But first, how do you
Yeah.
define it?
Well, to me, executive presence is having this leadership quality, this ineffable leadership quality that distinguishes you as the leader. So it's kind of a vibe, it's kind of a feeling. Ultimately, it's your ability to own the room. That is the way I see executive presence. It's made up of a number of different things, which are subtle, and some are super intangible and some are super tangible. But at the end of the day, it's a characteristic that helps everybody understand that you own the room and that you're in charge and that you're presenting yourself with, to use your words earlier, power and confidence.
Yeah. And I think what's not confusing, but what's hard to grasp about executive presence is, as you were saying, it's kind of a vibe. It's a know it when you see it thing. It's about how you speak, how you hold yourself. What would you add to that? Like, what do you think goes into the executive presence mix?
Yeah, it's actually how you dress, what you're wearing. It is definitely how you hold yourself in a variety of ways. So sitting and standing. It's the tone of voice that you use in addition to the words that you choose. I think in some ways, it's also things like eye contact. So all of those, little and big behavioral, they all come down to behavior. The behavior that comes out of you showcases to people that you own the room.
I love that. I love that. And, I totally resonate with the phrase own the room. That applies in person, right? Owning the room physically when you are in person with people, but also virtually, which is even harder to make that translate online or to capture people's attention when they have so many other distractions around them. So
Yes.
that's why this is so important. Yeah. What do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions or things people get wrong about executive presence?
The biggest thing people get wrong about executive presence is they don't think it's important. They don't recognize its importance. Maybe they would even deny it. It doesn't matter how I show up as long as my work is good. All of those kinds of things. So it's sort of not being aware of it is the biggest misconception, and I think the biggest mistake that people make. And then the second thing I would say is that it's this distinction around that it can be that it's a formula, that it's a one size fits all formula, which it's not. Just like any good leadership skill, you have to tune it to your environment.
I love that. How do you pick up how to tune your presence to the environment?
Yeah. I think it's the work of a lifetime. If we are lifelong learning students, which I know I am, and I know you are, it's sort of trial and error in terms of what works. So first step is to plan before you go in the room. So who is going to be in this room? I personally have facilitated discussions, and been in rooms with board members, with groups of CEOs, with intact teams, CEOs and founders of the startups that I work with. I've also been in the room facilitating a program for executive assistants, for middle managers. So it's sort of step one is thinking about who's going to be in the room and what is going to be their mindset, what's on their minds, the things that are important to them. And planning when you're going to be speaking or interacting with them, what you need, how you need to show up. So is it going to be a lot of warmth? For some people, it's important to have a lot of warmth. Or is it going to be with a lot of sort of show of power and show of confidence? For that, it'll be a different, need for that audience. And so I think that those planning in your mind, like anticipating and then planning in your mind, is kind of step one. And then when you're in the room, you have to kind of see, how is it going over? Are people responding to you? What do you see in their micro expressions and their expressions? What do you see in their body language? And then what kind of, rhythm are you getting back? I think that the best way to master executive presence is actually to master the ability to adjust and adapt quickly to the environment.
Yep. I could not agree more. It's such a great way to say it. I'm saying to my clients all the time that flexibility is the ultimate hallmark of professional maturity, right? Not just having one way of showing up and being all the time, but being able to respond and, like you said, adjust in the situation. Because, like you were saying, maybe you have to come into a room of people that have just been told your budget's been cut in half. The way you're going to hold yourself and the warmth or the empathy and understanding you're going to have needs to be dialed up there, versus if you're trying to get people excited and rallied behind a new idea. So, like,
Totally.
that situational awareness and taking the emotional temperatures is so key in being able to respond in the moment. Yeah.
It's so true. And it's, for example, if I'm going to go and facilitate a board discussion or an executive team discussion, it might be, this is a very serious external threat that we just discovered for our business. We are very serious, as opposed to, we just beat our forecast. We need to talk about reforecasting upward for the rest of the year. People are then giddy. So, right. So then there's a feeling, of being more informal and more laid back and more almost irreverent. And so the idea of really being able to understand what's going on and then to use your word, be flexible and have flexibility in light of that. So an important thing.
Yeah. Love it. I would just want to say hi to some other people joining us. Anna from Toronto, great to have you. Let's see. Charu in Texas, welcome. If you're just joining us, say hi in the chat. And again, as we are going along, we have Alisa here. This is quite the treat, the #1 startup coach in the world. So please be dropping in the comments what's resonating with you, what's standing out, any questions you have as well. So Alisa, is there anything else that you have seen among the leaders you have coached that they do really well when it comes to executive presence? Any other tips in this area that you have found useful?
Well, I think what I say often to founders, to CEOs, to executives, also, we may have to talk about this separately. Sometimes women have to have kind of their own special little, work on executive presence.
Yep.
One thing that works really well is to watch videos. Find videos of speakers, of presenters, of people who you can relate to. That they have great executive presence and they don't feel like a super fake version of what something you would never do. And find a way to relate to what they do, isolate their behaviors, and then start practicing one at a time their behavior. It can be more than one person. So basically, it's really find role models. So find role models in your organization, find role models in videos. And it doesn't have to be one person exemplifies everything. It can be, oh, I love that this person does this part. I love that someone else does something different. I hate this whole thing about this person. Fantastic. Do not emulate the things you hate. That's not going to work for you. Not a problem. But find what you do like and what you do know that you can emulate, and then practice one element at a time. That is the best tip I can give anyone.
I love that. I love that. And I'm always so excited when clients come to me and say, do you have videos of, I have to give this talk or I have to lead this panel? Do you have videos of someone doing that I could watch? Because, sometimes what we admire in others, like, oh, I wish I could be like that, is just something underdeveloped in yourself, right?
That's a great point.
Yeah, you see you have that potential. And like you were saying, executive presence comes down to behavior, right? And attitudes. And I know I personally, on my own speaker and executive presence journey, I'll watch speakers I admire. And what's the cadence of their voice? How do they pause? What do they emphasize? How do they carry and move their body or go across the stage? And every time I give a talk, I'll, this time I want to work on my dramatic pauses to really underscore a certain point. Another talk, I want to work on how I'm using my body and gestures to make the talk more dynamic. So I think it makes it really easy to make it manageable and demystify, oh, I have to have more presence. But what does that mean? Just isolate it to specific behaviors. Love that.
Yeah. Melody, I want to emphasize actually two things you just said. So first of all, people would say, oh, it's not behavior. You know it when you see it. It really is behavior. Actually, what is it that you're seeing that makes you know it when you see it, right? So
Yeah.
be nuanced in the way you see behavior. And then what we're both saying is look at role models and look at videos. And then what you're saying is you study, especially as a speaker, you study videos of speakers you admire and you think I'm going to practice this part. How about speakers we both hate, right? Like speakers like, oh, I can't stand that, but they're super successful.
Mhm.
Interesting. Why are they successful? Really trying to embrace and dissect, and even if you don't want to take on the behavior yourself, not a problem, but like understanding and unpacking what someone is doing that
Mm.
is working, even if you don't like it, actually can also be very effective because you learn something, you teach yourself something.
That's true. That is very true. I love that. I love that. And you're right. I'll watch speakers that are really humorous and that's just not my style. So, and it starts to bother me at some point. So I love that. That's a great point. Um, let's shift gears slightly to talk about power dynamics because, like you were saying, we could have a whole separate conversation about gender and executive presence, which yes is its own thing. But power dynamics also really comes into play, and at least what I see among my audience who tend to be more sensitive, more emotional people, they are the folks that will say, I just want my work to speak for itself. I don't want to play politics. I just want to stay out of all of that. Power dynamics are seen in a very negative light. So, how do you work with your clients to help them reframe that and
Yeah.
think about power just differently and even
Yeah.
more ethically?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a good word and a great question. So just last week I did a post on LinkedIn and the point was your great work should speak for itself, but it doesn't. I know it should. Oh, me too. I wish the same thing. It does not. You've got to make sure that people know you're around. So that gets into power dynamics, right? And so the second thing I would say to everybody is you can not like power. You can wish it weren't true. You can wish that only, the meritocracy were alive and well, but that's not the way it is. In corporate America, if you want to get something done, the best way to get, and by the way, in life too, the best way to get something done is to have power. So if you want more good people in power, then you need to take on more power because you're a good person. So that's the way you have to think about it. And if you abdicate it to the bad people, then they're going to have more power. So I think it's accepting reality is like, I always actually recommend to all my clients accept reality because it's just going to be so much easier. Right. And so the reality we have to accept here is that understanding that power is going to help you get things done, is going to help you embrace your own need to take on power. Then you can study power. You can be a student of power. And then it's just the X's and O's and mechanics of it. But often the first step is that mindset shift. And then interesting to me, from the point of view, we talked about personal development, what comes up for you when you say, okay, I give in. I need to understand that power is the way things get done. I need to therefore gather more power. Ooh, that makes me uncomfortable. Like really look into what that feeling is because that's what you're making it mean.
Mm-hmm.
What you were making it mean was fantastic. I'm going to feel empowered to pursue power. Then you wouldn't have that feeling inside of you. So
Mm-hmm.
I just want to say that for all of us, we are kind of limited. This is really your work. We're limited by our self-beliefs. We're limited by the things we're capable of and what we think is appropriate and right. And a lot of those things are assumptions. So take a look inward.
That's such a great point, right? And that I love the idea that you kind of have to play the game to be able to change the game.
That's
you
a
have
great
to
point.
you have to have influence and power to then be able to affect change, right? And change the policies or the look of the leadership table around you.
Yes.
And I completely agree with you. I think you're fighting against reality in a losing game if you deny people and power dynamics go hand in hand from the beginning of time. So let's embrace it. And also, I think it's very helpful. You were alluding to the fact that you can gain power. it's not a fixed thing where you're at a certain level on the org chart and that's all you have to work with. How do you, what are some ways or types of power that people can think about that are more malleable and can be increased?
Sure, right, because positional power, you have to somehow get promoted into positional power, but you have the ability to garner your own power. So what we're talking about is executive presence, exuding power, having people wanting to follow you. That is one form of power. Also, building up a network of powerful people around you so that they will help you get what you want done. That is another way to have power. Also, just building up a network of people around you, whether they're powerful or not, who know you, who will do a favor for you. And, sort of building your network in that kind of way, that also helps give you power. And then I would also add, you knowing a lot of things, you knowing more than other people often gives you the power of a subject matter expert.
I love that. Let's talk about networking, specifically internal networking. You are the queen of networking and relationships. And I just so admire your ability to do that, to connect with people and build those relationships over time. How important is it that someone have an internal network, whether they're, especially if they're trying to get promoted, they're trying to advance, have greater scope, take on more leadership responsibility? How important is it to have that internal network?
Melanie, that's like a softball question.
Yeah.
You're like, is it
No.
important? I'm like, yes, it's unspeakably important. I cannot give you a value of how important it is. It is infinitely important. And think about it this way. You will be as successful inside of your organization. You'll be as successful as other people will allow you to be. At the end of the day, you have to sort of see everybody around you as someone who can or will not vote for you. Will they give you the thumbs up to take on that assignment, to do the thing that you've asked them to do in the discretionary time? Will they be aware of what you bring to the table and pull you on to some sort of, team or plum assignment? The only way you have that is by building your network. I'm sure we're going to talk about tactics. And I just want to say that there are many, 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 many tactics to build your network. So if you're shy, we can find a way for you to build your network. If you don't like those big events, we can find a way for you to build your network. It's just that you have to decide. Again, it always starts with you. Internal decision. I understand. I give in. I capitulate. I give into reality. I have to build my network. What should I do?
And say that phrase again. You're only as successful as people
as other people allow you to be.
I love that. Someone type that in the chat. You are only as successful as other people allow you to be. I never thought of it that way, but even when you say, I mean, it's true in business as well. And so that is a huge mindset shift. Again, because everyone thinks, like, if I just do good work, if I have technical expertise, if my boss likes me, right? It's not just your boss, it's other internal networks. So yeah, let's get into some tactics. What are some of your favorite for going about building those internal networks and relationships?
Internal, you mean internal to a company?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, again, step 1, decide you have to do it. Step 2, assess your existing network, as in who do you already know, and are they in your own department or are they cross-functional? And it's very helpful to think about if the people I already know, number 1, who do I like as much? Who do I like? And number 2, who kind of is obviously like on the make and on the move and a powerful person. And think about how can I, in my normal day-to-day, how can I get more time with them? Whether it is, running into them more, which is a thing you can sometimes figure out how to do, or scheduling a coffee or a virtual coffee or a lunch with them just to catch up. So that's kind of really low-hanging fruit because you really want to build the connections more deeply with people you enjoy at work. That'll help you enjoy work more, by the way. And also with the people who are kind of useful and powerful inside the organization. The third thing is just that. Who else is useful and valuable and powerful inside of the organization? And how can you get to know them? So it might be just like cold calling them and cold emailing them and say, hey, let's get together for a coffee. We've kind of passed each other in meetings or whatnot. It might be having someone you already know introduce you, invite you to a lunch that you're both attending, whatever. One way or the other, find a few of those folks who you can then, add to your network and get to know better. And then the last thing I would say is looking up above you to your boss and, sort of your other more senior level employees. Are there one or two that you think would be amenable to get to know you better, for you to get to know better? And how would you do that? Would you volunteer for a project they're working on? Would you go to their office hours if they have any? Would you, find a way to spend time with them informally outside of work on the softball team or whatever it is? Or would you even feel comfortable getting introduced to that person, maybe having a coffee with that person? So I just gave you a lot of ways where even shy people, which I know it's uncomfortable to go to large events, I know it's uncomfortable to mix in sort of like social mixers, but one-on-one conversations are easy to do. And all you have to do is get over your initial feeling of like, oh, they don't want to talk to me. They probably do.
I love that. And it's a great reminder too that actually internal networking can be easier than trying to network externally because you already have a commonality. You
Yeah,
already work
exactly.
for the same company. You probably know at least some of the same people. So you have a warm connection there. Um,
100%.
yeah, and I love your point about leveraging the people you already know to introduce you to other people because I think we forget people want to be helpful, right? It's rewarding to us that oh, I helped so and so make a connection and they got assigned to a project like that. That is rewarding to the person that you are asking to. So it's not completely selfish. There is sort of a helper's benefit to that too. Just yeah.
Totally. And there's so much to say about that. People are like, "Oh, they're not going to want to be, they're not going to talk to me." Well, why wouldn't they want to talk to you? Also, don't you think that you could help them one day? Don't you think that adding to their network will be helpful? Yes.
Yeah.
Also, if you have kind of a mindset when you have a coffee with someone or you meet someone, your mindset is, what are your goals and how can I help you fulfill them? That will transform your experience with networking and also their experience of networking with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's key there is it's a long game, right? It's not
Yes.
that the first time. Well, talk to me about that because I think this is somewhere where people go wrong is
Yeah.
they network only when they need something and
Yeah.
then it backfires. So just talk to us about that. The
To Yeah, the point about building your network is that it's gonna help you get anything in your life done that you wanna get done. Get a new job, find a new project, find something inside of the company which is more fulfilling, or
Mhm.
find a great brunch spot for a for a city you're visiting for the first time.
Mhm.
Everything can come out of your network, right? And so recognize that actually having a diverse network will ultimately help you.
Mhm.
And definitely, if you're the kind of person who just comes around being a networker when you need something, of course it looks transactional because it's transactional. So it's really helpful for you to realize I'm a networker and I'm a giver. I'm going to look around to everybody around me to see who can I give something to? How can I understand people's goals? By the way, if you have nothing to give towards people's goals, you can give support, you can give listening, you can give at times commiseration, you can give praise. All of those are currencies inside of networking. But
Mhm.
ultimately, over time, you will need a promotion. You will need a new job. You will need a favor of some sort. And if you've laid the table by being the kind of person who will offer up favors, who will just be kind and friendly, who reaches out to you to ask you, how your kid's soccer game went or whatever, then you become the kind of person that people want to do favors for. So that's why it's a long-term process. People always say, well, when should I start? The best time to start networking, as to paraphrase the, I think, Chinese expression, the Chinese proverb, the best time to start networking is 20 years ago. The second best time is today.
Mhm.
So everyone should start today because you want to build it for the long game.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, I just want to underscore your point that this does not have to be I'm going to help someone above me get a new job or it's the littlest gestures of hey, I was really impressed and found it very useful what you presented in the all hands meeting last like the smallest
Exactly.
things, right?
Yes.
And that also builds familiarity over time so that
Excellent point.
you're not a stranger. It's, oh, that's Alisa from marketing. Oh, yeah, I know about her. And then you're top of mind when opportunities
100%.
come up.
100%.
Yeah.
I want to just tell you a little story about that, because we always think, oh, well, the executives don't need that sort of support or whatever. One of my clients, who is a very senior person in a company, she told me about her boss, who reports to the CEO. And she said that it was sort of clear to her that her boss, his love language is words of affirmation.
Mhm.
So we were talking about that, and I said, "Well, do you give him words of affirmation?" And she's like, "Oh no, I would never do. Why don't you give him? Of course, he's the big boss. He's the big boss, and I'm the. I said, "Well, why don't you just try giving him words of affirmation?" She gave him some words of affirmation, sincere praise, sincere flattery. It was great that you did that all hands thing, or people love it when you do this kind of video or whatever. He beamed from ear to ear.
Mhm.
He's now part of her inner circle. I wonder if that's going to, oh, she's part of his inner circle. Sorry. I wonder if that's going to help her career.
I wonder. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I don't think I'm writing this book on managing up. I think you know that. And upward empathy is very underrated, where it's very easy to complain about your boss.
Yes.
They're not giving you what
Yes.
they need. But you also have to realize that managers are under a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, and they don't often get feedback. They do tend to be more isolated. They're separated from the day-to-day realities of the work. And so, to your point, all of those things are currency that you can give them to help them feel more connected, even if
Yes.
you have lower positional authority. Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And let me see. Aramide was saying, I literally just said this to my mentee this afternoon, leverage other people. And she was talking
Excellent.
about leverage other people to build your network.
Very wise.
Yes. Let's switch gears slightly. Building your network is also very closely related to being more visible at work. And we've been talking about how your work does not speak for itself. You have to speak for it. What do you tell your clients, or what have you seen work for people in terms of increasing their visibility without seeming like they're the best thing since sliced bread and just bragging?
Right. Just bragging. They might be the best thing since sliced bread, but they don't want to kind of come across that way. So excellent. So number one, don't think of it as bragging. Think of it as communicating. How does anyone know what you're doing unless you communicate it? And so it might be a weekly just update or monthly update to your boss. P.S. If your boss does not like or want a weekly or monthly update, do not do that, right? So you forget about reading the room and figuring out what's going to work. But some managers really appreciate a weekly update or a monthly update with the things that you're working on. Number two, it's very helpful if you have a small group, one or two people around you, where you make an agreement that you're going to promote each other. As in, I'm not comfortable speaking about my accomplishments, but Melody, I'm delighted to speak about your accomplishments and talk about how great you are. And you do the same for me in rooms that we're not even around. Or if we are in the room or in a meeting, we just make sure that we document and clarify and articulate what the other person is doing. And that is very helpful, because it definitely rises all boats. Oh, by the way, when you're the kind of person who's praising other people, it also gives you a halo effect. Look at how nice Alisa is. She's praising other people, like that. And then the third thing I would say is that when you get results, share the results with other people. Not like, I'm so great I got the results, though. Not that I'm so great I got these results, but instead it's like, I got these results. Please use them to learn on the experiment that you're doing. Or I thought you'd find this interesting because I know you've been thinking about whatever the topic is. So those are a number of ways that are natural and normal for you to speak about the results you're getting and really articulate and clarify and explain and describe the work you're doing. By the way, people are interested in the work you're doing.
That's such a great way to put it. Like, what's in it for the other person?
Right.
And even if going back to your boss may need metrics to bring to their leadership. So at some level, you have a responsibility to be sharing that, because other people need that information. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I love that shift of think of it more like communicating and informing rather than bragging. That's really
10,000%. It's so helpful for everybody to think of it that way, and people will actually appreciate your communicating.
Yeah. Yeah. We're coming up on time here, and I want to thank you so much for being so gracious and generous with your time and with your knowledge. I want to end on one question about a topic I know you are an expert in, which is having difficult or delicate conversations. And I believe you have a opt-in or a free
Script.
worksheet or
Yeah,
script on your
worksheets on
site.
my website.
Yeah. So we'll point people towards that in the chat as well, or if you have the link, handy, if
Yes.
it's easy to say. But what are some of your like favorite strategies for delicate conversations? Because you're like a master at language for these.
Thank you for saying that. So, first of all, if you go to my website, alisacohn.com/scripts, you will absolutely find 5 specific scripts to help you have delicate conversations, some difficult conversations, specific ones, and one to make your life better. So, alisacohn.com/scripts. Also, in my book, From Startup to Grown Up, there are 11 scripts in the back of my book to help you have your own difficult conversation. I'm like a student of difficult conversations. And of all of the things that I would think about, I would say these are the top tips. Number one, get your mindset right. Because if you're going to have a difficult conversation, especially difficult feedback, and you're like, that Melody, I'm finally going to let her have it, then you are not going to have a successful conversation. It is not going to go well. It's got to be, wow, I have a few pieces of feedback to give to Melody. I should have given them already, and I'm the coward here. Also, Melody is a good human being who wants to do a good job for the organization. And what I'm going to be doing is helping her be her best. And if you think about that for your sort of difficult feedback or difficult conversation, kind of finding that empathy. So getting your mindset right about it being about having a constructive conversation. The second is about having empathy for the other human being over there. And the third, plan out what you are going to say. Do not leave it to chance. Do not be like, oh, I'm going to sort of tell her that, and then you get there and you're getting all nervous and you forget what you should have said or could have said. Prepare.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. And I love the idea of the person is doing the best that they can and they're fundamentally a good person because it's easy, right? Isn't that fundamental attribution error is
Yeah,
we think everybody else's behavior is they're such a jerk, they're a bad
right,
person. But when it
right.
comes to you, when you make mistakes or you're irritated, it's, oh, it was this circumstance or timing.
Totally. I was just tired.
Exactly. So just keep that in mind, everyone. And get Alisa's scripts. I put those in the chat here. And Alisa, I just want to read you some of the feedback that's coming in. Anna was saying, this was amazing, fantastic information to put into play right away. I am so happy to have found this webinar. And Dr. Dario was asking, can we get a recording of this presentation? And yes, you can come back to this page wherever you're watching it after we're done today. Just refresh and the recording would be there. And let's see. Anna was also saying, how nice would it be to have a boss like Alisa? Brilliantly honest. Yes. If only that's why we need Alisa out there coaching all future and current startup leaders, because these are the type of people we need at the helm. So Alisa's fighting the good fight and doing the good work. And let's see, one last comment from Candace, who said, as an oddball sensitive striver and someone who has ADHD, it feels almost impossible to build a network, but this webinar was extremely helpful and super practical. Thank you. So
Yay.
yes, Alisa, this was really useful. I love, again, you are just a master communicator, just hitting with the useful mindset shifts and tips always. So tell us where we can find you, how people can connect with you. I'll also make sure everything is in the comments for everyone.
Yep. So definitely alisacohn.com/scripts to get my free scripts, and also check out my website. LinkedIn, follow me on LinkedIn, where I put a lot of content and videos like that. You probably, if you like this video, you probably like those videos. And certainly you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter and all the socials. I'm always the same, at Alisa Cohn, ALISACOHN.
Amazing. Amazing. And you can connect with me at melodywilding.com and also here on LinkedIn. We're both very active on here. And thank you so much for joining, everyone. Please, again, come catch this replay, go back through it. There were great phrases and tools Alisa shared. And leave in the comments, leave what has stood out to you, what actions you're going to take as a result of this. We would love to hear. All right, everyone, take care of yourselves, and we will see you very soon. Bye, everybody.